Hello YouTube and welcome back. So today's kind of a ranter. And if you saw my intro, you'll know that this one talks about a little bit of Magic the Gathering. But truthfully, it's a comparison between the three major trading card games based off certain game style mechanics. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh boy. Here's another guy who's just talking his life away. Well, excuse me for that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm giving the viewership of the world information. Anyhow, let's first off talk about Pokémon. Don't get me wrong, it's a great franchise. It has Pokémon Go running for its popularity vote. It has Pokémon Sun and Moon on the rise pretty soon. If it's not already out, it's going to be out on the 18th of November, which still not that long away. And it has an animated series. But what's more is it also has a trading card game. And that trading card game is the only thing about the franchise that gets at me. You know, I can stand a lot of the stuff that Pokemon has. It has a combat basis of Pokemon battles. Both in the game of Pokemon's in every aspect of Pokemon, there are very intricate and fun battles. In the animation, you see Ash using what should be a level 100 Pikachu by this point against all sorts of Pokemon, both new and un-new. That is to say, new and old. But there are, like, un-new. Okay, if you didn't get that joke, well, it was probably a little bit of an uncle joke as it stands, but I'm not one to play judgment. Anyway, the ultimate mechanics of the card game are what I'm talking about in this video, or what I'm supposed to be talking about anyway. So the card game, and I've experienced this firsthand, so you're not getting a completely unbiased opinion about the game. See, with the card game, what I've been able to decipher is that Pokémon like you have 7 Pokémon that you're able to use. They're laid out in front of you, 6 on the bench, and 1 which you're using to actually attack. But the interesting thing is the mechanics of the board. See, you're drawing cards and you're actually setting up the board. And then you have 6 prize cards, essentially. The way it goes is you shuffle your deck of like 60 cards, and then you take the top 6, put them in the prize pile, and then you draw a hand of like 7 or 6. I don't remember what the hand count is. And then if you have a Pokemon, you set it onto the field, and then you do like energy stuff with energy attaching to the Pokemon, and well, that does limit the amount of time it takes for certain Pokemon to get to using some of the stronger moves. But in some cases, that's not going to spare the weak players, the noobs, and those who just flat out don't know what they're doing. See, with this, there are a few problems. First off, you're supposed to stack onto your Pokemon its evolved form so that it can become stronger. And if it's too weak, well, then it's going to die, and when you draw that War Turtle, you're already going to have a Squirtle in the graveyard. So unless you can draw Magic Revive, that's not going to happen. And what if you have a War Turtle and a Blastoise in your hand, but that Squirtle was one of your prize cards? That's kind of the interesting thing with the Pokemon card game, which kind of makes it lackluster. What would make it more of an interesting game to me is if it had a little bit more balance mechanics. See, if the prize cards were consisting of all your legendary creatures, your legendary Pokemon, and then extra cards afterward, then it would be better, because then you don't have, like, your opponent draws a Kyogre on their first turn, and then 4 turns later, when you don't have a War Turtle and a Grottle, they just flat out wipe your board, and by the time you would have gotten an evolution to your Squirtle, it's been gone for 3 turns, because that third turn prior, it had been out for 4 turns, that Kyogre that your opponent had, and they just used their ultimate ability, and that just wiped you out, and eventually you just ran out of Pokemon and you lost the game because of that. That itself, that is one of the biggest problems with Pokemon's card game. That lack of balance. Because players can get out a Kyogre so early as that, first turn, other players don't have a chance. So, if Pokemon TCG were to give its players a little bit more balance and restriction, that would give Pokemon TCG a better rating for me. Overall, the game and its franchises are astounding. Totally astounding. But the card game itself and that lack of balance where every other part of the game has balance. You have the 60 card deck and the limitations on each type of card. You have the energy, so you're not just randomly dealing ultimate damage when you get a creature out. Those are fine balancers. But the lack of balancing the legendary Pokemon according to animation and video game lore in the trading card game, the trading card game is ultimately lesser than the whole of the franchise. So, just simply because of that balancing mistake, I would give Pokemon Trading Card Game a C-. It's not a D, and it's not an F, but it's a C- for lackluster balancing.